Welcome to the Select Board meeting for Monday, July 24th. We'll call to order at 6:35 p.m. First item of business, surplus equipment request, police refrigerator, second read. Any discussion?
I have none.
No concerns.
Okay, we'll bring back for the next meeting and then look to recycle it, most likely at that point.
Okay.
Meeting minutes from July 10th, 23.
Second. Make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from Monday, July 10th as written.
Second.
Any discussion?
No.
None here.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Review and issuance of first water commitment for FY24.
Let's see. It's the 9155. Yep.
Mhm.
Make a motion to approve the first water commitment FY24 in the amount of $91.55.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Review of the memorandum of understanding with the Franklin County Solid Waste Management District for hazardous waste collection. It's our usual annual renewal.
Mm-hmm.
It's down to 2 sites now. I believe there was 3 in the past.
Correct.
Just Orange and Orange Transfer Station and Greenfield Community College.
Correct.
Our $1,000 budget is kind of standing always. We haven't changed in.
It's been the same for at least 5 years. And last year, I think it came to about $850, somewhere around there. So it was still within
Yeah.
budget.
Any questions or concerns?
None here.
None.
I'll make a motion we enter into a memorandum of understanding between the Franklin County Solid Waste Management District and the town of Erving on July 24th, 2023 for the hazardous waste collection.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I have agreements on that clipboard right there.
Thank you.
Okay.
The water commitment should also be with it.
Next item on the agenda, appointment of vacant appointments. Cemetery commissioners. The Franklin County, Franklin Regional County Governments, Regional Council of Governments, wow,
Right.
representative, and the Franklin Regional Transit Authority representative. Trying not to use just acronyms.
Yeah. Did the memorandum make sense?
It did?
So,
My thoughts on the cemetery is because we've finally gotten around to reconstituting it and having it a body that says that we can fill in if needed, I'd like to at least first see if there's a willingness of community members to fill those positions first, before we just assume that role for another rotation of 1, 2, and 3 years, respectively. And so I don't know if we need to fill those in the interim while we're looking for people to show interest, in which case we can make this motion, we can put ourselves in there, and then still open it up for others to, you know, put in their letters of interest, and we can always change that in the future if you need somebody to fill that on paper, in case any deeds come up or anything.
That would be primarily the only reason we'd need to have anyone appointed right away.
Correct.
Right, to sign off on the deeds. I'm fine with using the draft motion that was put in here with the staggered dates, which actually align with, you know, our rotation anyways. But I also think we should open it up instead of just defaulting and taking it on. At least open it up and see if there's any interest.
So if we had it with the staggered appointments, if there was, say, not 3 community volunteers, if well, maybe not Mr. Smith, Mr. Jones said, I would like to volunteer for the 2-year position, whoever's in that 2-year rotation would.
I was thinking the same thing. Typically, if there's slots, they are in their letter of interest. They're indicating to the appointing authority which term they're looking to fill.
Right.
You might find somebody who's willing to step in and take a 3-year commitment to it. Who knows?
Not having that right in front of me, I believe it was any and up to 3 board members, right? So if we have one interested citizen, it would be that and 2 board members, right?
Right.
That's how we structured it. Basically, we could backfill or act as if needed.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, it means that if there is a board, a commission that's doing that, then we wouldn't be holding that, you know, let's say there was only one person that wanted to do it, it would constitute a second meeting, and outside of this.
Right, a separate board meeting maybe, but
commissioners
specifically
meeting.
only the cemetery commissioners.
Correct.
Technically, okay.
Yeah.
I follow.
Which I think is fine, I just want, you know, people to understand that it's not going to be held at this meeting bi-weekly.
Right.
Having said that, I'd still like to open it up and see if there's any residents that want to volunteer to be appointed to that position.
I don't know any off the top of my head, but I agree.
No, you
that-
never know, though. It's been just by default. The select board has been doing it for, yeah.
Anytime we can have an opportunity where we can get more community involvement and people
Yeah.
engaged in our town government.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that we have vacancies all the time, I'm not optimistic that we're going to get 3 or more people saying, I really want that, you know, be on that commission and do that role. But you might find 1 or 2 that it's intriguing to them and that's what they want to do. You never know.
Dying to get in there.
We're in the process of advertising other vacancies, so we could include those,
Yeah.
the opportunity at the same time.
So why don't we, suggestion that we just appoint the board members through like October 2nd. Give us like just about 60 days, and that's a Monday, and then kind
Sure.
of
And then
can see if there's
nothing, then we
interested
can
people, and at that point we can put them in effect to
A new
term
bid,
ends
yeah.
instead if
Sure.
we don't have any parties that want to take our seats. Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Alright.
You want to make that motion or you want me to?
Sure, I'll make a motion to appoint the following. Let me start over. Make a motion to appoint Jacob Smith, Scott Bastrash, and James Lloyd as cemetery commissioners, effective with a term from July 24th, 2023 through October 2nd, 2023.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right.
Thank you.
The FERCog representative. So Mr. Bembry served as that with Brian as the alternate for a long time, so.
Brian, do you know, can you tell me a little bit more about their meeting times?
Yep. So the FERCog Council meets quarterly. So we just had their first meeting of the fiscal year last Thursday. They meet on Thursday evening, usually 5:30. There are some subcommittees. I can't recall if Selectman Bembury served on a subcommittee or not. I serve on one. And then we would just trade off who was going to attend. If we both attend, there's only one that can take a vote at the meeting. It's not the executive council level, so that's an opportunity. Some towns have decided to serve on that additional layer. That's not the requirement. But Erving's vote, it's a weighted vote in terms of participation, including our EQV calculations. So Erving does have a stronger representation on that council, so I think it's usually important for a representative of the town to be present at these meetings. It's the general business of the council, so the director will often bring the items that she needs addressed by the council, and there's usually about a 30-minute either training or explanation, some function of the FRCOG services that they cover, so that council members have a greater understanding of the work that the FRCOG is doing throughout the county. So it's quite informative, and it's not a lot of additional work.
Right. Thank you.
Yep.
When do they meet again? What's their standing?
Quarterly?
I believe it's the third Thursday. Yes, the 20th, third Thursday of the month quarterly. So July, October, January,
So
and
first-
then April
So third Thursday of the first month of the quarter.
Yeah.
of the quarter, correct. There's no-
You are on the subcommittee for personnel.
Personnel, yep. And there's no rule who you appoint, but it's typically either a select board member or the town administrator that is either the representative or the alternate representative for each town.
Yeah, I don't mind. I was asking about timing because I was interested in doing it, but I wanted to make sure it was in the evening and not another 2 o'clock in the afternoon meeting that I wouldn't be able to attend. Yeah, so, I mean, I'd be interested in taking on that, at least try it out for the next year until we have to reappoint again, see how it goes.
If you have the bandwidth and knowing the weight the position carries, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
And
I
also,
won't argue it.
no, I'd also be willing to make myself available in an alternate capacity if that is to be considered. I don't know if having 2 board members is a possibility, or should you be the alternate?
As long as you both weren't voting at the same time, we wouldn't have a quorum issue.
No, I
That would
think
be the only,
You only have one vote,
you only have one vote.
Right.
and
so they
the-
both can't vote even if they were
Correct.
both
Right,
there.
right.
Yeah, I'm assuming you're saying if as a representative I couldn't attend, as the alternate you would attend, or the alternate you would attend anyways, and if I'm not available to vote, you would vote, or?
All information is good information.
Yeah, agreed.
Anyone can attend.
Correct.
They're all public meetings.
Well,
yeah.
and that,
So, and we can have more than one alternate.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you could be, and then if you were able to and Scott couldn't, then you could vote.
be an alternate in attendance, and
And that's not an issue.
as a need grows or avails itself,
yeah.
then a step.
I don't have any issue with it.
I've got some guidance documents. Annually, they do an annual report for the FRCOG, but then they tailor the report to each town that is receiving services. So I've got Erving's report for the last few years that I can share with whomever is stepping into the role, so that I can try to get you up to speed with what they've been working on for us.
So I'll make a motion, we appoint Scott Bastrash as the Franklin Regional Council of Governments representative and James Loynd as the Franklin Regional Council of Governments representative alternate through June 30, 2024. In addition to, I don't need to vote you because you already are. Or is your term up?
No, you had
As an
appointed
alternate.
me earlier.
Right.
Oh, in
We
the
already did.
June cycle? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Then I'll stop it there. Through June 30, 2024.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And FRTA.
Who's the second on that?
I was.
Scott.
Now, the FRT I have not been as involved with. I believe they meet monthly. And to be honest, beyond that, I'm not sure if they've been doing hybrid or in-person meetings. Selectman Bembry served as the main point of contact for that, so I'm not as involved in that one. But we do have regular programming with FRTA. Obviously, the Council on Aging operates a daily service with them, and we have regular communications with their staff when we have concerns, so I can certainly make the connections between the administration at the FRTA and get whomever's appointed up to speed.
Any interest?
Yeah, I mean, I can take it on. I know there was, when I had some transitional meetings, I was given a heads up that, you know, these would become open needs and I should prepare accordingly. So I'm.
You were well briefed.
What's that?
You were well briefed.
Yes.
That's good.
And I'm grateful for that. So if that needs to be filled out, I will take that on.
So I'm reading it here because the advisory board meets 4 times. Third Thursday of September, November, March, May. So last month of the quarter.
So
is
it's
that-
quarterly.
Okay.
No, it's not. It's not last. It's varied. March, May is not last, but anyway.
No, it's,
Right.
March, May, September, November. At 4 p.m. on Thursday, the third Thursday.
Okay.
I don't know if that's manageable for schedule.
do they do alternates?
I've
not-
never been asked by them to have a alternate appointed.
Not that I see. Hang on a
Okay.
second. Just wanted to check the subcommittee as well. Board members. Some do, some don't. Erving did not, and probably half the towns look like they have an alternate, or maybe a little more than that, but about 50-50.
Well, I was just going to offer up, if you want to take the representative, I can go in as an alternate in case you can't make it till 4 o'clock one day. One of the 4, out of town, whatever.
Make a motion to appoint James Loynd as the Franklin Regional Transit Authority representative and Scott Bastrash as the Franklin Regional Transit Authority representative alternate with a term through June 30, 2024.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Excellent. So we'll notify both agencies tomorrow morning, and then we'll start connecting you all with them.
Sounds good. Is the FERCog last week or this week?
It was last Thursday.
Okay.
It was last week.
Gotcha. So you were there. That's right.
Yep.
Discussion of the select board authorization for warrant signatory. So, prior couple years, we had a single signatory for the payroll warrant and an alternate, or both alternates, I think eventually we got to. But left the vendor warrant as a majority signatures.
I'd like to continue with that. My only ask is on the payroll, if it's easier. I was going to say you're on that end of town, closest to the town hall, which they're normally there, but
I don't care. I mean,
yeah.
I don't recall if we had each of us as an alternate. Or do
Right,
we even
'cause you're
need to just say any single instead of designating?
Do you have to?
Do they have
does
to
it-
designate?
Is there a requirement? You have to designate somebody, right?
If you're going to do this, correct. So you don't, there's by no means a requirement to do this. It's just an option that was created when they did the update to the laws.
Right. If
But
you
it should-
don't do it, then it just defaults to a majority.
Right.
Yeah. And I think for payroll, it makes sense. It was just easier to have that one person.
And there's a lot less variability in it. You know,
Correct.
compared to vendors.
Correct. And I would suggest we stay with the vendor still being as is with all three of us with a majority as signatory.
I agree. I don't have any issues with the way it was. I thought it made sense and worked.
My only thought about the payroll warrant is, you know, in reading, there are, you know, some departments that payroll is a majority of their budget, so there's a lot there. But you're right, in terms of reviewing it, it's,
Yeah, financially, it's a bulk. But as far as documentation wise and review, it's
straightforward.
pretty straightforward.
And I guess I thought of it from the standpoint, a lot of those issues are identified from the treasurer or from the department head or the appointing authority, other ones that sign off on it, or the accountant before we get the warrant anyway. So it's got a different set of look on it than the vendor. I have no problem if they want me to do as the primary. I would just, if we can designate more than one. I don't recall if we did.
Three of you are in charge. Let's do whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, you can put us both as alternates.
Well, that's what I was gonna say.
Just, you know, because
It's like-
with your work and your travel.
Yeah, if I'm out of town or something, you know,
Right.
and vice versa.
Okay.
If, you
And
know,
if you
somebody's
think
not.
the law allows us
sometimes
to
we're
do
all
an alternate.
doing different things. So
Yeah.
We can put it forward, and the worst that I'm going to get is feedback that they would like something more specific, and I can bring that back to you all.
Sure.
If that's what I'm given for guidance.
Okay. So make a motion to appoint Jacob Smith as the payroll warrant signatory authority with Scott Bastrash and James Loynd as alternates.
alternate. Yeah. I think we make sure it doesn't sound like it's the two of you. It's each individually. Maybe each with.
Instead of and or.
Or, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. That's all. Just want not to sound like it's together. Second.
I'll second that. Oh, you seconded
Either
it,
one.
sorry.
It's all good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We'll wait and see what they say.
I'll let you know.
Thank you, Jake, for doing that.
Sure. Now I have to put it in my calendar. We have a second letter of resignation from Mr. Gordon from the tree warden position he was reelected to on the first of the year. And we have begun to advertise, or can begin advertising now that we have the vacancy again. So we'll be looking to appoint a new tree warden here soon. Review of the police department policy 1.15, handling juveniles first read. Anything on first read? Normally we don't have much, but
The only request I was going to have is, do we have a track change, or is this? I looked through it and I didn't see anything that jumped out as track changed. Because
Is
the
this-
PDF usually doesn't carry it, correct?
but
You're asking for the Word version?
isn't this
Is it brand new?
isn't this stock policy with town changes version 1?
That's what
Or
I'm
is this?
asking.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know
I
because
don't
we
know.
don't have it, right?
Because we
Okay.
don't have it, so
Yeah.
I don't
Right.
know if this is
Okay.
just the first
can-
read that he did with modifications from.
Any revisions that he made have been embedded into this copy, because I don't have a track change version. I just have a clean copy.
Okay.
But I can ask Chief, if you're looking for that, to provide either the track changes
Yeah.
or an explanation of what was modified.
Yeah, even if it's just a quick email with explanations of
Okay.
anything of substantive changes related to tailoring it to the town of Irving.
I had a few things. This is actually my first review of the document, but in throughout the document, where unless it's specifically stating child required assistance, which is a state-sanctioned term, I would recommend replacing the word child with juvenile, and also anytime the he/she pronouns are used, to also replace those with juvenile, to be more specific about and consistent with who we're talking about. In section 3A.2, there's a place where it is meant to, I believe, meant to say care, and it's spelled car. And then, yeah, it's A2.
Yeah, under definitions.
Yep. It says interfering with their ability to adequately care for and protect the child. It should
got it.
say care.
There's the grammar police again.
So there's a,
I'm just teasing.
and the last thing that I would, further down in section 3, under the bullet points, it references case law of Commonwealth v. Wallace, and the sentence starts, recently, comma, in the case of Commonwealth v. Wallace. I would recommend striking the word recently and beginning the sentence with just in the case of Commonwealth. Reason being is this policy could last an indefinite time, and recently is a subjective term that may no longer fit.
I can work with
I
Chief
would-
to get those in.
Well, I would just add to that, the bullet above refers to it in less detail, so usually there's a more detailed reference as the first reference, so
Okay.
maybe that needs some work too. Or if the bullet with recently actually changes what that bullet above needs to be based on the recent conclusion. Any others? Not on this read?
So we'll get all of that for you for your second read? Okay.
Please and thank you.
Yeah, you beat the grammar cop on that one.
With that, I will call the joint meeting with the Finance Committee and the Capital Planning Committee to order at 7:04 PM. Come on up. Welcome. So I'll flip the order before, and we'll start with this, the reserve fund transfer request. Which first for the board, if we're going to approve and request it, and then we'll hand it off to the Finance Committee. So this is a request to transfer $14,575 from the reserve fund for the accounting software licensing for our current software while we do the transition to the new software. So we didn't originally budget expecting to go this far into this fiscal year with the transition. So we'd hoped to have it done already. Obviously, that's not what happened. We have about $10,200 in that appropriation right now, and we expect to need around $25 to carry through half the year with the current, so we can run them simultaneously while we do the conversion. Any concerns?
No concerns.
Motion? Is that easier?
Yeah, that's easier. Make a motion that we request a transfer from reserve fund in the amount of $14,575 for the accounting software licensing for SoftWrite.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So Finance Committee, we have a reserve fund transfer request.
No.
I guess I won't sign it.
You sounded favorable.
Yes. If we recall,
I was just gonna say, I think we've already discussed it, and we were in favor of it last time, we just needed this formality.
I believe so.
Do we by chance have a motion, gentlemen?
I'd like to
Pass
make
that
a
on to the
motion-
chair.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the, authorize the reserve fund transfer for $14,575.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Photocopies?
So I can erase it.
I have trouble coming from the Finance Committee tonight. A feisty bunch.
There you are, sir.
I could borrow your pen for 1 second.
After that, we will get into the FY24 financial review. So you'll see the memo regarding that, what was sent out to the departments, and what we have received back so far for written responses. There's some in the memo, and then there's additional ones that came in later today. I believe you have both of those, one from the chief of police and one from the treasurer. And so I'll go down through them high level, and then open questions, comments, concerns, and obviously if we have follow-up or want to have the department heads here to discuss any of these, please, we'll just note it and schedule it. Town clerk and elections, Mr. Newton reviewed the budget for '24 and believes it's sufficient for the intended services. Do you know if it was discussed with him, the potential for, I'll say, maybe multiple additional special elections or special ballots for an override? And if that had capacity? I just thought of it
Yeah.
in the
I
moment.
didn't frame it like that to him. I know he was planning it based on the town's annual and then the state and federal work that needs to be done. Let me revisit that question with him.
Okay. I don't know if we need to budget for more than one, but I think we're pretty confident there's at least one.
yeah, I mean, he
So maybe
typically
two to be safe, just because
budgets
we don't
down
know.
to the penny, so.
Yeah,
Right.
So
Especially on elections.
the whole purpose of this discussion.
Yep. Let me ask him again.
Other questions related to the town clerks?
No.
Community planning. Ms. Kurtz had reviewed her budget and said at this time it looked to be sufficient and is working on the multi-year review. I don't have those notes pulled up right here, but I do believe there was a small budget cut originally in that department
We pull it up.
during budgeting.
Was it the bike path for 8,000?
I feel like it was
That just popped into my head
that,
for
but
some reason.
wasn't that capital?
That was capital, but I wonder if
But
that was
still, I
something
mean,
that
it
was
is
cut.
still a cut. And was that clear? Because we did say operational maybe, but it really was inclusive of capital cuts too.
Right. And for like highway, there's requests for capital.
Right,
So
okay.
yes.
So it was clear, okay.
In terms of the bike path there, that wasn't a grant that we were awarded.
Correct.
So
Okay.
that opportunity's been
So the match is not
Unnecessary.
needed because we
Unnecessary.
didn't, okay.
correct.
Okay.
I'm just quickly pulling up that list of cuts to the requests. Okay, so community planning, the reduction was in 5,000 in consulting and surveying, 500 in print services, 200 in travel.
Surveying, huh? You don't happen to know what that was related to, do you?
Based on the projects that are coming up that we need to complete, using the past history with the select board, working with that office and usually the highway department on the surveying needs for the different projects, we typically have anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 in those professional services that you've needed to do a project or two each year. The highway department also requested a line item like that for similar reasons. In the past, you've used your consulting line for that, which then means you can't conduct other work on behalf of the town.
Questions, comments, concerns?
I just wonder if that should be restored. There's some pretty significant projects in the works where I would assume surveying would be necessary. And I don't necessarily think it's a good idea to have it all fall under the highway department's budget, because then at least we would have two places for it to be if one, if it ran over, or if we had multiple projects going on.
I could also see planning might be doing it years before highway would be doing a project right now, probably that needs it, or you're planning a project more immediate. You said it was 5,000 that was pulled?
Correct.
Did that leave any, or was that the whole of it?
I believe 20,000 was what was appropriated, so the initial request was 25. Verifying right now. Okay.
So just,
10,000, sorry.
10 is what it was, or 10 is what it is?
10 is what was approved.
10 was approved, 15 was the original, then?
Correct.
Okay. Sorry.
no, I was asking for clarification on the number, and you
Sorry.
got it.
Okay.
So if you can't answer, Brian, I understand, because this is going to be a wide question. On average, do we know how much like surveying for a project cost, or is that very dependent on what exactly the project is and what's being done? I would,
Can vary greatly, obviously.
Yeah.
The project that we're doing right now on Bridge Street and Maple Avenue was about $6,000, just for those two short
Okay.
streets. And those are
That's what
fairly
I
straightforward
signed it earlier. I
layouts.
was going to
yeah,
confirm.
okay.
If you have to do something that has more deed research involved with it, or you have a more complicated layout, and you're going back to, say, old county records,
Yeah.
certain levels of that depth of research may cost us more. especially if we have to replace more monuments. There's a couple $100 per monument that has to be installed, so it can range by the project.
Okay, and it's not necessarily just, I think when we say project, everybody assumes like Bridge Street or a bridge being repaired, a big thing. This can be something like, if we want to take ownership of a road and it needs to be surveyed to make sure we have all the meets and bounds correctly.
All of that has to be done in advance, or we can't do the petition and
Okay.
the legal process. Or similar, if you wanted to subdivide a parcel, I'm thinking when you sold 18 Pleasant, 17 Moore, we had to survey the properties and adjust for square footage to have a legal buildable lot.
Okay.
So all of that had to be done just to sell the property.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and they, they can vary. I mean, that one was not 6,000. It was, much
No.
less. So they can
Yeah.
be a couple thousand through
Right.
10 or 12,000.
right.
Okay.
We do have some complicated ones coming up. Obviously, we've talked about North and Swamp is an upcoming project. When we get to Paper Mill Road, that's going to be a complicated project, teasing out what is the road layout from what is the IP mill property, because the two have bled together over the 100 and plus years of the use. So there's definitely some more complex layouts that you have to work on in the future.
Okay. I think I stand by my initial that I would recommend putting that back.
Five thousand.
Yeah.
I mean, this conversation is just the initial of what's
Start-
the overall
Start
look.
putting them, yeah,
what's the
start putting
overall
them
look.
down and looking through it. It's not the decision. It's not the final part where,
No, no,
final
yeah.
time we'll discuss it, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
well,
Anything else on community planning?
no.
Nothing here.
Highway department?
I don't have a problem with the bullets that were requested, a couple of them being capital, for part of that discussion when we look at the total plan and whether or not that requires an override or however we get there. But I would like to talk about the conversation about staffing, because that's an unknown number, and we should probably, if we're going to engage in looking at what the total funding needed is, that has to be addressed.
Agreed. If you don't mind, before we jump
Go
into
for it.
that, of these 5 bullets, I know were all of these in the original? And are these the reduced amounts? Like, is this, okay,
Yes to the first part, no to the second part.
okay. All 5, including surveying, were in the original budget?
Correct. What was reduced in highway? So contracted services was reduced by 5, so he's looking to restore that full request. Surveying services was requested at 25. It was fully eliminated, so he'd like to put that back in. Vehicle repair and maintenance was reduced by 5,000. He'd like to restore that. MISC bridges was something that we have not funded in years. It's a special article, and so he had asked to put in 5,000 because we have some preventive maintenance work that was removed. So that would be to restore the full request. And highway roadwork improvements was requested at 100,000. Given the projects that are already in the works right now, and we looked at the available balance in the existing special article, he believes that 50,000 would be sufficient to work on the culvert work and some other repairs that he needs to accomplish.
So this is the amount of, it's 90,000 of what would be asked to restore, of what was actually cut.
He reduced his request by 140,000, so he's asking to restore it by 90.
These are all what were cut except road work is half of what was cut. He's only requesting to put back half of what was cut.
Yeah.
Correct.
Is that what you were saying? I wasn't following. Okay. And not bringing back all the road work sounds like between capacity and projects in this
Right.
fiscal year and that whole thing.
Right.
That's what makes sense.
Right.
questions or thoughts on that right now?
What happens in the event of a storm that washes out a road where we're not getting any type of assistance in repairing it?
This is the line item.
This would be the line item that would
That's
use
the line
it.
item.
Oh, I was gonna say, we have to pay for it and find out how and figure it out.
Yeah.
Right.
Reserve fund.
Right.
I mean, things like that, right? We don't have any other ways, I don't believe.
Call a town meeting. Yeah.
So I would question is that, should we consider restoring it back to 100? Maybe that's a question for future when we meet with the department heads. I just worry that the way our weather has been, especially this year, if, last year we lost Poplar Mountain, and I can't fathom the weather is going to improve, and I look at the damage that just happened, in our county locally, and wonder if, do we, just want to make sure that we have the funding if we needed to react to something, that we're able to do it.
I think it's worth having the conversation and looking at the full picture and seeing where we're at, when all the requests are looked at. The bottom line, if we're looking to redo or amend the FY24 budget, I'd hate to nickel and dime it to the point where we end up having to go for an override, but we don't ask for what we actually need. And then 6 months later, 9 months later, we're going, oh, if only we had thought a little bit more about adding this and this, we could have actually accomplished the things we needed to do. So I think we'll have to flesh those conversations out in the next 2 months, month and a half, while we figure this out. But I'd be in favor of bumping that back up to the full 100,000 as a conversation starter.
Okay. Anything else on that, other than staffing? So staffing, so we obviously made some changes
Yep.
since budgeting and reinstated the foreman position, which we had but was vacant and hadn't been filled for a long time. I mean, to me, that leaves us, that sets us up to at least need one more
Correct.
body than was originally budgeted, at a minimum. There was a part-time clerk position, maybe even further back, that has not been backfilled in a
That
long
hasn't
time.
been backfilled for
Probably since
3 years.
2020 at least.
Yeah.
Maybe end of fiscal year 2019.
Yeah.
I'm not clear on, go ahead.
No, it's just where, I understand if there was a vacant laborer position, that those work hours or work responsibilities would have been assumed, absorbed by the other labor force, but who took on the duties of the part-time clerk when that was vacated? Was that absorbed into
Superintendent.
the super's job?
Yeah.
And my fault was gonna be, is this noted that we've made changes and this is the status of it, or is that a request to have it?
Have the conversation.
Have a clerk?
Oh, have a clerk. No, it's just to
It's just noting where we are and what has been.
The full staff and complement of what we had for a department before included those positions.
Okay.
And they just were left unfilled.
Mhm.
And that, I don't think, was necessarily a conscious decision that those are no longer positions within the department. They've been on sort of the books and not.
Yeah.
It wasn't decided we didn't need them.
Correct.
They were just vacated.
Correct.
Is what you're getting at, right?
Correct.
And if
So-
we're having the big picture conversation,
Right.
don't forget.
My ask was going to be, let's just figure out a dollar amount of what the hours for the part-time was and the hours based on the new wage table for what the operators, a new step one operator would be, and at least build in that as part of the request. So that we have the capacity, should this get approved and move forward, we have the capacity to fill that void. The reason we wanted to bring the foreman's position back is because we have a superintendent that kept the foreman's role and the superintendent's role, and then took on the clerk's role, and the bandwidth just shouldn't be there. Even if they have the capacity to do it, we shouldn't be asking them to do the position of 2.5 people when prior to that person in that role, we did not. We had 2.5 people doing those roles. I think bringing that back makes sense.
So was any of that clerical work, like the additional burden, offset or eased in any way by increase or improvements in technology? I guess I'd like to talk to the super to see
Yeah.
if.
He would know best, absolutely.
I'm with you. I'm not against it, but I would like to talk through it too. And with the foreman and the superintendent now, is that a need or is that balanced with that team?
I don't imagine the workload's been decreased at all as
I
a
was-
result.
I was going to say, I do think we've increased our custodial staff, we've increased our overall highway labor staff, and definitely doubled or tripled our overall projects for them in the same 5-6 years
Yeah.
since some of these changes were made. So I think holistically, how is staff meets the service level and the demand that we're putting on, as well as the citizens' expectations.
Could we maybe ask for a staffing plan for the meeting that we have with the department heads? What the supervisor's ideal staffing plan for that department would be, just to kind of give us an idea of, to start looking at, just some, he would know his department best, and so that going forward, that I need this, maybe he feels he doesn't need a clerk, but he could use 2 laborers instead.
Right.
So maybe if we could get something, just a scat, we're not gonna hold him to it, but just an idea of what he'd like to see.
Was that him or all?
I mean, I think the only other department that mentioned staffing was the PD. So I would say the same thing for them. If any other department feels staffing is a concern, then absolutely. I wonder if we'll see a little bit more of that maybe in the longer term plans when they get those to us, if that's where that will turn up, because that's more of a broader issue. But just because it was, I only bring it up because it was specifically called out here for highway, so.
I was thinking the same as, it's probably more of a 5-year picture, and what does the staff look like in 5 years, but how we're gonna get there starts now, maybe, so, yeah. If they're not ready with the 5-year stuff next time we talk, which is fine, potentially, at least the staffing piece for them makes sense, yeah. An ideal state based on demands, service level expectations, safety, all those pieces, right? What they envision as the right level. And then we can curb their hopes and dreams. No, I'm only kidding. Anything else around staffing for highway?
Nothing here, no.
Police department. Which I seem to have misplaced. So, recap of what was reduced from FY24. There was the wages were reduced related to the cadet program.
You printed copies for the finance committee?
Yes, you'll have a copy of the memo, right?
Okay, just making sure.
Part-time wages were reduced slightly. I say slightly, but I don't have a reference to what the total was, so maybe not slightly. Not yet. Shift differential. Is that a reduction?
It was reduced by 64.
Okay. Below the, oh, okay. Electricity, which we know we made lots of adjustments there, once we got through some of the high rate period. Phone, heating oil, building maintenance, uniforms, which also slightly tied to cadet program, and academy, also tied to cadet program, kind of the inclusive expenses. Wages, so with that adjustment, we don't have the cadet position. And part-time wages should be adequate, but we didn't use a lot last year, so if that changed this year, that could be a shortfall. And we have 2 individuals who have or are leaving. So if we do have to send people to academy, then that line doesn't have enough in it for multiple. What do we have in, oh, it's 5,000, so
It's
it's 1.
5,000.
It's effectively 1 at best.
Well, it's one without, it's actually short for like equipment and
Right.
very streamlined.
It's
Just have
1 for academy and doesn't include all equipment, right?
Correct.
It probably includes what they need for
Just to attend,
things to attend, but
Yes.
not the overall, okay.
not the post-graduation
Yeah, equipment,
equipment.
yeah. Shift differential should be sufficient. Electricity, I guess that's if we have a crystal ball on what rates will be versus
Yeah.
last year. Will they go as wildly high or not? So, which probably can be said for every department. If they did, then
Yeah.
we probably didn't budget enough. Phones, we are looking at that. The term contract expired and we went on, regular rate, if you will, for a period there, and that's likely what's driving that in many departments, being over. So we are looking at renewing or considering a new contract or something that may affect that positively. So I don't know that that'll be an issue in FY24. Heating oil looks okay. Building maintenance. And then uniforms ties back to cadet and whether or not there's a need there. I think we all talked about cadet program at length last time too, so I mean, I think that and all the related stuff to me is kind of a, yes, we need to put it back.
I agree.
Yeah. I'm also a little concerned with part-time wages. If I'm reading this properly, 6,000 is what is currently budgeted. But for FY23, he spent 5. And if we are down 2 right now and going to utilize part-timers, I'd be a little concerned, is that enough? What he has in that, is that line accurate? Not accurate, but is it going to cover if he needs to use more?
And actually, I have a kind of similar, but a little bit different on the part-time. It just seems like it's misnamed. I mean, if it's forced overtime, then it should be overtime, not part-time. And my understanding is we don't have any part-timers employed.
We do have part-timers employed.
Yeah.
Okay.
His
Yeah,
hope
and
is,
it is part-time, and he was saying instead of forced overtime, using part-time.
Right, in lieu of
part-time
forcing
people.
somebody.
In lieu of, there is a separate overtime line that would cover full-time, regular full-time.
I don't read it that way. Well, I mean, I believe you that there are part-timers, but I guess the way that I read it, to assist with forced overtime on the full-time staff members and to assist in overtime costs.
Right.
So is it
assist in-
overtime
in-
or-
Assist in
preventing.
decreasing, in preventing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's missing a word.
Provides relief from forced overtime,
Yeah.
Thank you.
what I believe was meant to be said.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, and to assist in reducing overtime costs. I think
Yeah.
the reducing word is supposed to be in there twice. It's meant to
Yeah, I think if you.
to
if you
reduce
read
those
it,
things.
It says part-timers play a vital role in our department, offsetting forces to the full-time staff and providing equality. So it's,
She's reading the first page bullet, which is a little
okay.
it's misleading the way I think it's just
Got
missing
it.
those reduction
the,
words.
the
so-
narrative down further talks about it.
Yep.
I know Chief doesn't have a crystal ball, so okay.
Right, and he had another obligation, so he did ask if he needed to be here, and I said we'd be revisiting this more than once, so tonight was understandable. I mean, I agree with you. The only thing I will say is if we have vacancies, then we're not using those full-time wages that can cover part-time wages. Theoretically,
It's a wash.
that's within the same budget, so
Yeah.
yes, they may not be budgeted accurately to what we're using them for, but we would have the money in theory. Now, if we have officers we're sending to the academy who are not here but are being paid, now we don't have
That was my next question.
the wages.
When
I don't
officers
think.
are in academy, do we utilize part-timers to help
Yes.
backfill some of that as well? So then he could still potentially have a shortfall.
Absolutely. And those are a bit of just question marks because we don't know what we'll have for a pool or who we may be able to hire.
In our most recent experience, do we find that most officers that we're hiring are going through the academy, or they're coming in with academy already? Or is it a mix and that's,
I don't think we can base it on what has happened because of all the changes with post and now that part-time academy is no longer a thing. And I think maybe this year, everyone's bridged. So now there'll only be full-time certified officers, or
The last
you're not an
cohort's
officer
finishing.
yet?
Yeah, it's a unique time where in the past, if we found, a gem of a part-timer who showed potential and all of that, they would have the reserve intermittent classification and then would need to go to the full-time academy. Whereas now, if anybody is currently working either on a part-time or a full-time basis and they would lateral over here, they were, at this point, required to have the full-time academy certification.
okay.
So,
And it's either that or it's someone who wants to get into law enforcement who doesn't have the academy.
Right.
And then we have to
Okay.
send them
Yeah.
before they can do anything, basically, right?
Okay,
Which is the purpose of the cadet program.
so,
yeah, yeah.
right.
But in hiring with what appears, at least in what I've seen and heard, to be continually diminishing pool of candidates, it could just mean we have multiple cadets that we're hiring, not,
Yeah.
I mean, theoretically, at least in the definition of that, they're meant to be full-time, but they're not ready to yet. So we'll be sending them just to get them to that point.
Question.
Yes, sir.
The reason why we're possibly losing two, is it wages? Or is it closer to home? Or is it, because now with this new wage study, we could be able to keep people longer?
I wouldn't presume to guess. We can try to get a better answer to that question, unless Brian knows offhand. But I'm sure there's a multitude of factors, right? I think one of them might be, and I don't believe what they left for is anything in the realm of our scales, whether they were adjusted for changes we made just recently or not. he was well beyond all of that. So I think it's just not something we compete with anyway. So we're
I have another question.
entering, we're talking with the union about negotiating and seeing what we can do. So that we've opened the topic with them, and they've, I believe, agreed and have, wanted to come to the table and have some conversations about changes and what that might look like. So we've started that discussion. I can't elaborate more than that, but we are looking at it knowing that, that's just the climate and the challenges, right? It's one of the factors we need to look at. So.
Can we put in a minimum of 3-year working for us before they decide to leave, or?
If we put them through, if we put someone through the academy, for example,
Yeah, so give them a
We
3-year, give us a
can.
3-year commitment at minimum?
we can. The enforceability of those is limited.
It wouldn't be binding.
But it can be, but it's complicated. And actually pursuing them is the challenge, right? Not to make them sound empty, but
Pursuing them is a challenge, and it's also,
costly.
it's a deterrent for somebody. Not very many municipalities are doing that, so it's a deterrent for somebody to look at it and say, I have to do a multi-year commitment, whereas the other 4 agencies that are also looking for staff are not asking me to do a multi-year commitment. Which one do I choose?
Yeah.
In speaking in generalities too, again, it's competitive, and if you look in digital media, or there's departments right now, it's gotten so competitive that, there are departments that are offering signing bonuses that would be, I just don't know. I'm not saying it's a bad idea to put it there. I know they've been there in the past, but we are battling in a very competitive market for people with these skills.
Even a couple of years ago, if you told me municipal jobs were offering hiring bonuses, I would have said never happened. It's just not something, I don't know if it's ever happened before, but
Right.
it's definitely more of a private sector thing historically, so.
Do we exit interview the officers when they leave?
When individuals ask to have an exit interview, we do make that offer. So I do have an employee who's asked for one, and we are doing that.
But we don't do it as practice.
Do we request it and they can decline, or did they request it or we don't? I guess maybe is that a clearer question?
The current practice has been to allow the employee to request if they would like it.
Something interesting to think about too.
I'm
Maybe.
just wondering if hearing from the person themselves, whether that,
Mm.
as to their reasons, might give a little insight as to what the drivers are.
Yeah.
Oh.
So if-
Doesn't hurt. The worst is they don't, or we don't get more info than we already have.
Right.
Right.
So I was just looking at the requests that the chief had put forward, and just using round numbers, just because this is a starter conversation. Wages, I think we should have that as part of the discussion, because I think bringing the cadet program back is important. We've made that very clear. I also do think part-time wages, given the potential shortage, and yes, while overtime may not be used, and I don't know if those are balanced appropriately, so I'd be in favor of adding 4,000 back to that. Oh, and my rough number was just 50,000 for the wages, but I have no idea, based on the new table, if that would be.
Right now, the current table's 2% higher, so.
Right, so I'd have to look.
Actually, that
I don't have
probably
it in-
is
I think that
budgeted at
is
2% because it would have been budgeted at the
correct.
plan table,
Yeah.
so.
So I was just putting some wiggle
Till
room in
anything
there
further,
of an
yeah.
extra 1,000, just for whatever reason. Electricity, just looking at his narratives on the second page, working at 1,000 under that, phone 2,000, building and maintenance 1,200, uniforms 1,000, and then the academies. We currently have 5,000 If we were to send two and outfit two people, you're looking at 10,300 each. So that would be, we'd have a shortfall of 15,300 there. So just a rough ballpark, you're looking at about 75,000 in requests.
The last one, Academy, I didn't follow the math.
We already
What-
have
say that
five,
again?
we have 5,000 in a line item to send somebody to the academy. But if we had to outfit that person post-academy, if they were not already fully outfitted, you'd be looking at about 10,000 roughly. So we're 5,000
Gotcha.
short. If we do that a second time in the same fiscal year, you
We're
need
15.
another 10,000. You're short about 15,000,
Okay, I
15,
gotcha.
15.6, I think it was, you know. But I was just calling it 15,000 because there's some, I rounded up on some of the numbers above just to make it easier. You're talking around 75,000 from the PD's request based on his narrative.
I got 141.
If you're adding it up from the front page,
Yeah.
that is not what he's requesting. That is,
The front page is what, the recap of reductions. from
that's the recap of reductions. In his narrative on page 2, when you start going down through wages, part-time wages, academy, with all the narratives below it, there's some of those where he says, I think this is sufficient, we don't have to add it. So,
So Scott, you're suggesting putting back the 15.3 for the academy as part of that number?
yeah, that was,
Okay.
because that, knowing that we have 2 and that we would be trying to actively look to fill those, I would suggest working that back in. And again, this is just a
So hold
preliminary
on.
discussion.
I'm not sure without looking back, but I think 10.3 was taken out. We put 5 back. So 5.3 is the delta from the original request, but you're saying we should add 15.
15.3 is what was cut initially. I'm looking at the memo. So initially, when we made cuts, we cut 15.3 from the police, from the academy line.
But then we put 5 back in.
Right, so,
So the net cut is only 10? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Yeah.
Okay, the net cut was 10, not 5.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha. But you're saying that should be 20 in the line,
2 people.
2 people.
Yeah.
So adding, okay, gotcha.
Well, shouldn't it be like 30?
Yeah, now that I'm,
Well,
it
Well,
is.
If we're gonna,
If 15
we're
was
putting
one.
forward the cadet program, that would be another 10.3.
Yeah.
well, I don't know. If 15.3 was the original request and that was the need, then it'd be 30, to your point.
Yeah.
Right.
No, and I think for conversation, then yes, it'd be 10 more, so you're looking at approximately 85 if we were to do 2. I was mistaken when I thought 20.
And that's assuming 1 of 2 and bringing the cat. If we're hiring 2 and adding cadet, only 2 of them need to go,
Correct.
hopefully,
Correct.
if.
That's a safe number, hopefully.
Yeah.
Maybe one will come in.
Yeah.
God, I hope so. I hope too. But yes, I hear you.
so we're saying a total budget line item of 30,000 for the academy.
Would be sufficient to send 2
Yeah.
if they came in without any academy or bridge
Okay.
academy trained qualifications.
I think I'm having some real problems then with the numbers, because he's saying that it's 3,000, the cost of the academy is $3,000 with an additional 5,000 for equipment, so that's 8,000 right there. And then if a new officer comes in, it's another 1,000 for a vest. That's 9,000 per person. So,
And then additional, probably round it to 10 once you add in
okay.
other various
that's-
equipment.
Yep. So we're basing this on 3 people? Is that it?
2 officers and a cadet.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and that's where, that's not academy, right? Some of that's academy costs, some of it's not academy costs, some of it's equipment.
Correct.
Which is called out separately down here further. Like, we have uniforms, and I don't think equipment's in the academy line.
That's where he's in charge of it.
Is that where it is? Oh, it's in there too?
considers it the sort of the preparation.
Kind of
for-
all in, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If there's a better line item description and you'd like it tracked differently, we can do that.
Yes,
Maybe in our new chart of accounts.
yeah, I think having academy
Kind of
spelled
read about
out
that tonight.
as academy and then associated costs as academy.
Okay.
So best, whatever they need to get them going. I think it'd be nice to have it broken out, just so it's a little clearer.
Yeah, that would assist me.
Well, and I think there's a piece of that is potentially any new officer.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
Not
just
just
someone who needs to
academy.
go to academy, and that's a different cost
Yeah.
than, you need to go to academy and have ammunition and do all of those things. That is just related to academy, right?
Yes,
Maybe that's the call out you're thinking?
yeah, yeah. And obviously not till the new, if that's a new software thing. Wouldn't ask for it to get graded now.
To do the new software that we're trying to launch this fall, I have to do
Yes.
it now. So actually, it's a
okay.
very timely conversation.
It won't show up now, but it will be ready.
Right.
Yes.
But it'll be ready
It's
to
got to be
roll out.
programmed now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Linda, back to your math problem.
Yes.
If I'm following, and I think I understand, if the original request was 15.3, how does that add up to 10, to 9, 10, whatever? How do you get to 15.3, I think is where you're struggling, right?
Well, I was struggling with the cost per person when all of a sudden it went up to 20-something thousand,
For two.
and when it's only 9 per person.
Yeah, and if there was gonna be three,
Yeah,
potentially
that's-
three.
And is that
And if-
plus the cadet program?
Yeah, well, the only reason I said that was because if we're looking at putting that forward possibly,
Right.
we need to include it or we're gonna have a shortage.
So it's the 30,000 for 3 people to be trained at the cadet, I'm sorry, 3 people to be trained at the academy, plus their uniforms and vests.
I believe,
And
if I'm reading it the way I
Well,
think I am.
that's
Yeah.
my issue, and that's, but then what about the cadet program? And that's an additional,
So the cadet program is
15
just the
wages?
wages. You have to just look at the wages for what we would pay them while they're training
Okay.
as a cadet. And
And we can ask to
Okay.
clarify this when he's here in the next meeting, but
Yeah.
I'm
So I'm-
thinking through it, I would speculate that the original 15,000 request in the academy line was 5,000 for a new officer. Should we need to hire somebody in the
Once you
year
add it all
for
up,
equipment?
That's the thing, the uniforms and stuff are separate,
yeah, you
right?
lost.
okay.
But
Right,
then
that's okay,
I
I'll
think
let him
that's
finish, I
what
don't
his
wanna-
overall number is, like the academy's 8 and then the equipment. That's,
All right.
if I'm reading it correctly, I don't know.
It wasn't cheap.
Yeah, no, it's not cheap. I'm thinking, and we can ask Chief to clarify this, and I'm sure he'll have all the detail. The original 15,000 request for this year was likely the cadet going to the academy, getting all the equipment, 10,000.
Right.
Hiring an officer who doesn't need the academy, probably
Okay.
5,000 of equipment. I think
Okay.
that's what he had incorporated in there. So the 15 doesn't sound like 3 academy, but
Right. I can
It's-
understand that.
yeah, okay. So, I don't know, 20, 25, 30, we're in there somewhere,
Yeah.
right? So,
Right, if we're just assuming
Yeah.
that we're gonna have potentially 2 people come in
Yeah.
that aren't academy trained, then at
Right.
least we have the money set aside.
plus enough for the
Right.
extra equipment for the other person,
Right.
so 25, 30 is probably where we're at there.
Yeah.
So is the academy?
But it's a placeholder
It's a
anyway, we're
placeholder.
gonna.
That's really all
we
it
can
is
make
right
sure
now.
it's
It's
the
a
right number.
placeholder to flesh out actual numbers when we, meet with department heads to finalize what they believe they would need, going forward for future years. But then also a future conversation, we sit down with the school and tie all this together as a full conversation for the entire budget of the town.
So is the academy operational or capital?
Operational.
Operational. Yep, it's one time, and it's operational.
For clarity, when he presents, maybe we could just ask Chief to break it down. This is the academy cost.
Yeah.
This is the gear cost. This is the supply cost. That kind of thing.
I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask for clarification on his academy costs. There's no allowance for transportation costs at these cadets, or at that point would be recruit or student officers are going to and from the academy, so there's fuel costs,
We've been providing a town vehicle for that,
right,
to cover that. If they were to use a personal vehicle, there would be a mileage cost.
right.
Correct.
So should that cost be factored into academy, or is that coming out of general budget?
If it was going to be a mileage reimbursement, there's another operating line for travel in mileage, so it would be attributed there. Whether or not that's sufficient to cover what that cost potentially could be,
Right.
all depends on where the academy is. Obviously, an academy down in Springfield is going to cost something very different than for sending somebody to the other side of the state daily for class.
I'm just wondering if that cost should
Right.
be factored into what we're calling an academy cost.
Right. That's a fair question. I can ask Chief to be prepared to speak to all of those.
Do we always have a vehicle available that a cadet can take?
That's what I was just gonna say, maybe
Always is a
vetting
strong
that
word.
question.
In the past, we've always provided, I shouldn't say always, in the last several years, we've provided a town vehicle. So whether it was a leftover vehicle from a different department,
Yeah.
or now that you've added a fifth cruiser, so you have a little more capacity. With that being said, there's been times where somebody's had to use a personal vehicle, and again, there's a reimbursement for the mileage on that. If every vehicle is tied up, one's in the shop, something of that nature, it may be that a personal vehicle is used. But the preferred travel arrangements is a town vehicle that we're providing.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
And you're saying if it's a town vehicle, they're just rolling up the fuel cost in our standard fuel budget, and it doesn't.
It's charged the
There's
fuel
no
budget.
other,
Correct.
unless there's some random maintenance, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So I think the ask there is clarity on what the detailed, somewhat detailed cost for two people to go through the academy that are not trained, all the way to fully outfitted officers, and then outfitting a new officer who is academy trained, right? And then either contemplating that we do have a vehicle, or what would the cost be if we don't think we have a vehicle for them to use. I think we might have a vehicle parked behind me.
Yeah, we do. I was looking at that
That's what
one.
I was thinking.
That was too. But who knows? They may hire for that. So then it may not be the case. So really rough, I think, about 50 for cadet wages. We're talking about 25, 30 for academy. We're talking about probably, say, about 10 in miscellaneous other stuff. And then maybe even 15 if we need a few more uniform thousands, depending on
So
hiring.
what are you at, about 105?
Call that 15. It's
Yeah.
not quite, because I didn't put anything for part-time. We didn't really talk about a
Okay.
number, did we?
No.
So I don't know if we want to earmark a number or just ask
You said
for.
4, Scott.
I did, but,
I wrote down 4 grand.
but I know, that's not based on, that's based on his narrative. It's not based
Yeah.
on trying to do the calculation of offsetting overtime line. If we're not utilizing the overtime, we can do an internal shift from overtime to part-time wages if we have the part-time ability to cover.
How about for sake of argument, we just leave it at 4 until
Just
we-
for the conversation.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is our preliminary one,
Yeah.
so
Just say it sounds really low to me, but that'll depend on where we get to with hiring, and maybe we'll know that by
Right.
the time we're setting
So what do you,
it out. What do I get all total? I don't know, I probably missed something.
110,
55, 100,
100?
yeah, about 100.
Well, based on the 140 from highway, and I think there was 5 that we just talked about from community planning. Well, the only other one we didn't talk about yet was
Treasurer?
treasurer, but also school said nothing, and we'll have to have them here to have that conversation. That came from Caitlin, and then rec commission said it was unnecessary based on changes within their own budget, so it would just be from,
So before we go into treasurer, 140 is without any labor, and we know we need to make a labor shift.
Correct, we
So it's
need-
probably I don't know, ballpark, it's 200 plus for
Yeah.
one body. I mean,
Yep.
I would think
Yep.
it's at
You're
least
right.
that. And depending on benefits and all that, we may need to add too, so. And town clerk, we're waiting on, we're gonna revisit about elections.
And that would be a couple thousand. It's
I'm
not-
assuming,
it's-
yeah,
it won't be-
2, 3, 4, 5, something in there.
Yeah.
Community planning, back to that one, so somebody refresh my memory, I don't have it in front of me. Matching for a grant, matching funds for a grant was a long time discussion, and we talked about it as a capital item, as a community planning budget item. I don't know where we were gonna land it, and I don't know that we did it.
I thought we did it this budget season.
We
Talked
pulled
about
it?
it 2 cycles in a row.
Okay. I just wanna put the,
Yep.
like, asterisk next to it, like, that's one that I think if we didn't do it, because I don't recall, because we made so many changes, I'll trust that you know, that we didn't, then do we?
Yes,
If
we
that's
have
something
that
sustainably we wanted to have and we don't have it, then should we be putting it in?
We talked about 25.
And it was supposed to go to the FinCom reserve fund portion of the budget. So it would be available
Yeah.
just like you use the reserve fund.
Yep. And I thought we didn't do it? Because I swore we talked about doing it specifically because the Historical Society got a grant, and we had said that that would be a great one to kind of test the program out.
Call us doing it.
That went in as a
Okay.
capital, that was funded through the capital committee process.
Okay.
Yep.
In my alternate universe, we created it.
Not yet.
Okay, so, say 25 there is a question mark.
Yep.
Treasurer.
I think the treasurer had only mentioned, what, a couple thousand?
To restore the tax title funding.
But also said it's not detrimental to the operation. So just sort of keep that in mind when we're furthering that conversation.
Say that again?
It was that her email said if it's possible to add it back in, that'd be great, but it's not detrimental to the operation.
Got it.
I think it allows the flexibility for utilization, but it's not going to cut services if they don't get it.
We have nothing from water, wastewater?
Some people were out of town, so they'll be back this week. And so I need to get from his office. And I think there was one other office that was unavailable. So I'm sure they'll be coming in this week.
I think the other one was rec.
Bretta responded, though she noted that obviously the commission hadn't had a chance to meet. They meet monthly. I'm not sure when their next meeting is. But
Nothing from the library?
nothing from the library yet.
Yet, or they don't need anything? They haven't responded?
They haven't responded yet.
Okay.
Refresh my memory, did we cut anything out of capital?
Did we what?
We cut on capital too,
$400,000.
but, yeah, but is there anything that we should be looking at putting back in?
I will have to go back through your meeting minutes to see what you initially considered in your first proposals and what you finalized, but my recollection is you did reduce that substantially, so let me double check.
I think capital 2 might be more of a bigger discussion. I think we probably have to meet, because I think that's, if we're gonna be thinking long-term, I think we need to look at that. What does that look like long-term?
Yeah, I think we went for a minimal.
And we're also looking at a policy for vehicles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You all had wanted to work on that policy this summer, and you also wanted to restructure your request forms
Yeah.
in preparation of the upcoming budget season.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to schedule that meeting with you all.
Nothing from assessors?
That was the other office that was out.
Okay.
Returns this week.
And did we give a deadline for when we wanted the multi-year plan to be in? Did we set a date for that?
You all said 90 days was your review period. So I don't have a firm date of when you wanted their responses, but if we stay
Okay.
within your 90-day window, I think you're going to need them back in the coming weeks
Yeah,
to be able to
Okay.
complete your work.
I'd say by the end,
60 to 90 was specifically for FY '24 though.
correct.
To get it in, get an STM, get a ballot, get all that done before we want to set tax rate. The 5-year influences that some, but it also may need longer, I think we
Right.
acknowledged. Though we don't want to go back for another.
Correct. Is there a date that you want me to give them for a firm multi-year? You currently, at least the select board, you're meeting on August 7th next and then the 21st. And for scheduled business, you right now are just meeting with the school committee tentatively on August 21st to look at any letters of interest for the school committee.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, I think we want department heads here on the 7th, right? And the rest of the requests, or lack of. I guess, do we want department heads here if they said they didn't need anything for that department?
No.
If it's not wastewater? Because I assume that's not the case, but I would want them here if they're going to say it's nothing.
Right.
Yeah, because they cut, so,
Yeah. And it's a bigger budget. Some of the
Yeah.
smaller ones, if they're
Yeah.
comfortable with it, I don't think I'm not personally in a position to argue that that's not true or be concerned.
I guess I'd like to see August 3rd or August 2nd as a hard date for the FY '24 budget information to be in, so the departments that haven't responded.
You said August 2nd?
Yeah, because then Brian will have a couple days to get those out to us before the
For the
joint meeting on the 7th.
The 24th one, the FY '24
Yeah,
ones?
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, so then we will have a couple days to look at it before
Okay.
the meeting on the 7th, if that's going to be our department head meeting.
Wednesday by noon. That's the cutoff for Monday meetings.
And then all departments, the 7th.
FY '25, do we want to do like 2 weeks after that and try to have them for the following meeting on the 21st?
So,
We pushing it? I mean, we're going to meet with them on the 7th. Have them here.
part of our discussion last meeting was trying not to have multiple, we have to see what the FY '24 requests are and whether or not it will trigger an override once we sit down. And part of that conversation is, having the school here to look at their entire budget and how much capacity was built back into that and was it overbuilt. And I say that based on the likelihood of, with all the increased cost this year, that there was still able to turn back money,
I should
potentially.
be able to
We're
give you
waiting-
that soon.
Yeah, we're waiting on the final numbers on that, but, looking at that as a potential likelihood that there's going to be money turned back, even in the midst of all of the increased costs, to then increase it by another, I think we went up $600,000 or $800,000 on top of that on town floor. So there might be capacity there where FY '24 does not need an override to be sufficient. And if it's not, then we have time to sort of take a breath and say we have enough for FY '24. If we all work collectively as one budget, we can take our time on the FY '25 and beyond and just do one override for the long run. If in that conversation with the departments, department heads and the school, we don't have the capacity to fulfill all this and we have to do an override earlier, that sort of changes the timeline. So I think it's
Dynamic?
it's dynamic and fluid, until we can sort of figure out what our actual capacity is now and that determines how we move forward.
Well, if you gentlemen already have a meeting planned on the 21st with the school committee, would we be able to turn that meeting into the meeting that we need to be having with them?
I would think. Go ahead, answer.
I hope so. Well, actually, I'd like to see me here on the 7th when we go through with all the departments, personally. At least either a school, someone from the school around the budget or a school committee member or both, preferably. My question on the school piece was, there was a lot of back and forth on when they were gonna have that meeting, because then they have a meeting and they wanted to have that person sworn in and ready and all that, so
think
it's
that's
not
the
the same
22nd.
night, is it? It's the following night?
I think it's the 22nd that they're meeting.
So they don't have that meeting that night after our meeting, okay.
I haven't seen it posted yet, but
Okay,
I believe that's the
okay. I know there was a lot of back and forth, so that was the only caveat to that, is that at one point they were talking about having a meeting like 20 minutes after our meeting with the new sworn-in member, so I don't know what happened with that.
Well, they typically meet on Tuesdays,
Okay, so then it's probably
the next day.
fine.
But I can double check to see if that's been confirmed. But you're right now, the preference is to have them here for the 7th.
Yes.
Okay.
My only thought to that would be, does that give the school committee enough time to thoroughly review the budget and look for areas that they might feel is excessively budgeted? And to Scott's point about, the school might have capacity to alleviate the FY '24 concerns, does that give the school committee enough time to review and look for that? And for them to pinpoint any areas that they might feel are excessively budgeted at this time? I mean, that's like 2 weeks for them to try and get together and meet, and it's August, there's vacations. I mean, I would love to see them be able to pull it off, but I just know that's, to schedule a meeting sometime can be like herding cats, so.
We can ask them for the 7th, and if they need till the 21st, so be it, but, right? I mean, I think we can
21st is a fallback.
be open to that. I'm not concerned about giving them a little bit of time. I mean, they were asked a week ago, but, as a starting point. But it's also a big budget, and it's important that they have the time to thoroughly look through it too, so.
Well, and it
the balance.
doesn't, from Caitlin's response, it doesn't necessarily sound like this, that sounded more like Caitlin's response, not the school committee's response. Because she had said that the school committee had not met to discuss it.
Correct.
So,
Correct. So, to your point, I mean, I agree, it takes a little while to get a meeting, but make sure it's clear that we expect answers, not, we haven't met to discuss it yet by that. Especially if they're gonna wait, if we wait till the 21st. And I think they're willing and interested in being part of the conversation, last I knew, so I'm hopeful that will not be a concern. I just scroll back through some of those requests, or the changes we made, and assessors, I know they'll present something, but just high level. They did a few different transfers for $30-something thousand to offset the revaluation from other lines, but revaluation usually is needed, and I think we carry it normally every year, so
Right.
it's not sustainable that it's not in there. Even, they may not need it this year per se, but
This is a one time they could do that.
yeah, so from the, are we building a sustainable FY '24 budget? We need to go back in theory. I think that was about 25
Right.
for revaluation. And then they also pulled the assistant assessor position. I don't know when that needs to come back, but there's some point. I believe that's more of a one-time,
Yeah.
because it's a one-year overlap, so it's
Transition.
maybe not relevant for this.
Right, when we meet with the school, can we make it clear too that we would like them to be including any capital? Because I know there's a lot of talk right now about their heating and cooling system, and I know they had a grant. I think they got, what, $100,000 grant to evaluate it and to check it out, and There was a hope they might be able to make some repairs with that funding. But if that is something that is, I don't know how long that process was gonna take, but if that is something that is completed and they have an idea of what that might be, I know in the past it was talked that that ties into several other projects they've talked about, like roof, skylight leakage and things like that, so that's definitely something
Yep.
that we would need to be prepared for.
Okay.
Did we reduce OPEB too?
We did by 200,000
From 3 to 1?
from 3 to 1.
And I know I have the tables right here that we got on like when we'd be fully funded and stuff, and it doesn't mean that was a bad decision or a necessary, you know what I mean? I
Correct,
think
but
we
it's part of
should
the
revisit.
conversation. Yep.
Any others? But we're gonna expect to hear formally from assessors and from wastewater, water, and obviously the stuff we already noted. Fire. Did I miss that in there?
No, we forgot about
That
it.
was another vacation, I
Need to
believe.
hear back. Yep. He's
Yeah,
out right now.
Or out of the office.
Yep.
So wastewater, water, fire, library, assessing. Accounting, we're good within treasurer and that mix. Tax,
Yep.
good there.
Yep. The financial offices, the only focus is the big project.
Which we just funded.
Yep.
But they needed, okay.
Yep.
Are we missing others that would be of note?
I'm just looking at the list for general government. There was Concom trail maintenance, the grounds maintenance program. We covered Mariah. I think those are really the only two.
The only conversation that we stopped having when the budget became more challenging was the transfer station conversation.
The recycling center?
The recycling center, thank you.
But I'm glad you brought it up because if we're talking about staffing, there's a one-time cost, then there's an ongoing cost.
Correct.
So as part of that discussion, we should incorporate what that would mean if that was included. I think the capital side was around 100 we were estimating
If we wanted to do everything all at once.
for the sake of discussion,
Yep.
I would say. And then the operational cost was not maybe as well defined.
I can finish mocking that up if that's something you all want to take a look at.
I don't know if we need more detail than that, but just to have it as an item that's part of the conversation, right? Whether we may do or may do in the future, and is that incorporated in how we're
Right.
levying?
Right.
For that, when you say recycling center, Brian, are you talking like what I think of as the Greenfield transfer station, where you can cans, bottles, yard waste, you name it, you can take it there, whether you pay a fee or you?
Yes. The only difference is that it wouldn't be for household trash or bulky waste because you have the curbside collection of annually for bulky waste and weekly for your curbside trash. So we wouldn't be taking that there, but all the others, your white goods, your textiles, your brush, your tires, your
Electronics.
electronics, all of the stuff that we've always taken down there.
Correct. This is restoring. The only concern that superintendent had was, I think, mattresses.
Right.
So it's
Finding-
restoring, not adding, because I'm kind of thinking if we're gonna begin to look at doing something like that here in town, then I would question the need to continue the Anything Goes program. Because if we're gonna have somewhere where people can just take it and drop it,
That's the only thing not taken, is what goes for, primarily everything that goes for anything goes is not taken, was
Right.
not taken, and I don't
Correct.
think was part of the plan to be taken.
Correct.
okay.
It was mattresses, it was bulbs, it was fluorescent bulbs, it was electronics, appliances, small and large appliances.
All
it
of
was
those things get
tires,
recycled.
Okay,
brush
so-
and leaves, the things that,
Yeah. I was gonna say I wasn't clear, because when I meant Greenfield takes debris and bulky waste. That's what I was thinking, more along those lines, so I wasn't clear.
The
in my
chairman
question.
corrected me when I said transfer station. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
He clarified it's a
It's a
recycling center.
Okay,
So it's materials that are going to be processed and reused in some capacity.
okay. So,
And we never took cans and bottles, and I don't think we would be adding
No.
you say recycling.
I know, I know. I do too.
No, we don't need to. And the
we also do
license,
that curbside.
the licenses
Yeah.
that we, are completely different
Right.
for a transfer station versus a recycling center.
So it's truly just restoring what we used to do.
Correct.
Correct.
Under,
Okay.
under a proper
Okay.
license with proper
With the
infrastructure.
proper setup and, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Some are all, but not necessarily anything more.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
You were going through the departments, was there anything else that jumped at you that we missed? I think we covered public works, public safety.
Now there's the assessor's overlay district overlay, but I'm assuming that that would be covered in the assessor's report if, and when we receive that, so. I mean, no.
Okay.
I think every department, either they've said that, no, they don't need something. Library did have a few cuts, rec had a few cuts. So maybe something will be different when rec has the opportunity to meet, and maybe when library turns theirs in, we'll see something from theirs.
Yeah, if we can get confirmation, I think, to that point that those who needed to meet have met and are like, confirming that they're good or not.
By the second.
Yeah, ideally,
Yeah, I don't know.
if meeting is a challenge for some of the other boards and committees that need to, we can obviously make adjustments if we need to for the 21st instead. We need it by the 16th, right?
Okay.
I think that's the right day. Yeah, 16th.
Senior Center's another one we don't have anything from, sorry. It's, as I'm scrolling it.
Agreed.
And she did have cuts. It was electricity, propane and purchase services, so maybe she can do it out, but,
Yeah.
So 7th, those who have lists here to discuss them, those who have some by then.
Yep.
Hopefully everyone, but if those that can't, will be the following,
Okay.
2 weeks following.
Are you all meeting at 7 o'clock?
I mean, we're not, but are you all?
nah.
No? Okay.
They're very non-committal and not willing tonight.
Joint meeting 7. Got it. Okay.
Same old, same old.
And I'll meet with Capital separately about the other items, policies and forms and stuff. Okay.
Right. And any other capital items that weren't listed by departments, the 400,000
Yep.
funding.
Okay.
Anything else on FY '24 at the moment? And FY '25 TBD based on how FY '24 goes,
Yeah, I mean,
on timing.
yeah.
24 and 25, I just want to go back. We had talked about the 5-year plans and the 90 days. What day are we at in terms of the 90-ish?
40.
24?
Yeah, we're technically 24, but yeah, we're almost done with the first 30 days. So
Okay, so,
But 90 is to either, to a special town meeting, right?
right.
Yeah,
I mean,
we
90 is really not just review, it's an STM.
It's drafting the STM warrant, so we really do need to give you the information you all need to make decisions in
3 to 4
August,
weeks.
so you can plan for September.
right. So, we're at day 24
of
What?
60.
Of 60.
of 60.
Yeah.
So,
So no, I think you all holding the next conversation on the 7th with people in attendance to answer your questions makes a lot of sense. For the multi-year, I don't know what date makes sense to you all. I don't know how deep those conversations can go in the time frame that you have to do a multi-year discussion about what changes in each year. You at least probably could do a high level.
Some of it's staff plan, right, which we will hopefully be at least talking enough high level to get a sense. I hope, on the 7th. And the rest of it, we're not really gonna probably know until the 21st, either the 7th or 21st, if we are gonna try to get into the FY '25 plus 5 to make the determination, or if we have more time for that,
Okay.
right? So, I don't know if we'll have that answer until the 21st, at the end of the night.
Okay.
I mean, earlier I had made the suggestion that, when we all meet, there may be the capacity, but I had forgotten that we used free cash for $400,000 worth of, so you add that in. Just today, we were at 325, and we still have 5 other departments to come back and talk to us. That's 725. I wouldn't be surprised if we crest over $1 million, and to think that capacity is there, it's not. So that, and a lot of that was single year. So we're not talking the multi-year, that was single year. So the idea that we wouldn't need an override for '24 is highly unlikely. So keeping that, sort of
Yeah.
thought that these meetings heavily focused on '24, knowing that we're probably going to need an override if we're going to try and make these changes for '24 to be able to set the tax rate, sort of gives you a little breath on saying, what's your 5-year plan? Let's, know it's there and know we have to look at that, but we also need to move forward in a timely manner and not bog it down with a 5-year plan in the next 36 days.
I think
No, I don't want to get bogged down, but I also don't want to lose sight of that, because
No, I think that
what we
conversation starts
project
in
there-
September.
yeah.
I think if we can finalize this and it's immediately in building our FY '25 budget, we're already incorporating that conversation, saying we're not building 25, we're building 25 through 30. At least the capacity to get there.
But if we do 24 expeditiously and then start 25 plus, I think it's the thing that we said we were trying not to do, which is we may have a second override because the 5-year needs more than the 1-year did.
Correct.
Right? But to your point about, I think we need it, if I recall correctly, we were somewhere in the 1.3 or 1.8 first cut on the budget
Yeah.
over.
1.8.
And then I think we got down in the 7, 8, 900 before we worked the rest of the way through. So to be somewhere around $1 million plus coming back out of this wouldn't seem to be surprising. Maybe we can cut that in half depending on what we can do with other changes we made, but that doesn't sound like zero.
No,
So
no, it's not a net zero by any stretch.
then maybe this helps, is to say, okay, when you come with stuff on the 7th and or the 21st, if there's any major shift in what that might look like in the next 5 years that you already know about, bring that too. Like, it's one thing to think about it in minute detail, but if there's a significant shift change in something you need to do or costs coming up, that would be good to know now rather than after.
6 or 8 weeks from now, yes.
Yeah. And even if miraculously that came to zero, we're still gonna go for an STM for the IPMO, right?
Correct.
So we'll be doing an STM in September regardless. So August reviews, maybe meet on the 28th. I think that was our maybe, right? Because the holiday is the following Monday.
You all agreed to the 7th, the 21st, and you talk about your next meeting date after that.
Right. So maybe the 28th, maybe the 11th,
Okay.
setting an STM for the end of the month.
Yep.
And then a ballot. We'll figure out how that fits in there
Okay.
at that point.
And then I would just ask, because it sounds like, I thought we'd have a little bit of information, but if we're gonna push for long-term and stuff, I would ask, can we make sure that we have the information, the packet out to all of us no later than like Saturday the 5th? So that way we have time before Monday night's meeting to review it and come with our questions formulated and stuff.
Absolutely.
Let's do Wednesday at 2. By noon, we can get it out by Friday.
And you brought up the IP mill, just a little plug for anybody out there listening and watching.
The survey?
The survey. If-
Please plug it.
Don't ignore the email that you got, or, go onto the town website, fill out a survey, because it will inform, it'll help inform us what the masses are desiring of how to move forward.
Yep. And Mariah's worked very hard. All the information is on the town website.
Yeah.
She's gonna back that up, and I would encourage people to please go and read it and review it and check it all out.
Participate. Yeah, and participate.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a frantic 6 weeks.
Because we don't have anything else going on.
Nope.
I think we've
Yeah, I
said
think
enough
we're
on that
good.
tonight? Yeah?
Yep.
Okay. Anything else, finance for us, or vice versa?
No.
All you needed was the form, which we signed, right? Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'll just ask, is capital going to meet sometime between here and the 21st then?
I would
Chair.
assume so.
Yep.
Okay. All right. I think we'll want that too. I got two very small things
I was gonna say you have
left,
two
so-
more.
Yeah, I guess a motion to adjourn the joint meeting and continue the board meeting at 8:32 PM.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
I was gonna say, don't regulate adjourn.
Two
I know.
remaining, yeah, no, I might keep trying to point at them. Two other items that were unexpected last minute here. We have,
Excuse me.
we have a request on July 29th. There's a annual summer party on North Street. And the request is if it would be possible to shut down North Street southbound from 11 a.m. till 7 p.m. on July 29th to lessen the traffic flow and eliminate possible problems with parking. And given it is just a few days away, I didn't want to wait to put it on.
They want to shut down
Southbound North Street,
southbound North Street, so all southbound would
From-
be diverted down Church.
right. So it'd be northbound up north and it'd be southbound down Church. And the section of north to, from the intersection of Church and north, on north to Route 2 would be closed.
Can't,
Southbound. Right,
because we can't send overweight vehicles over the bridge.
right.
In years past, when the bridge was open, we could divert every vehicle down Church, but we cannot divert overweight, which means if we're shutting that down, if they want to do that, that would require a police detail with both ends.
And
to
they
do
would have to be
alternating
able
traffic.
to open it if there was, at least if a heavyweight vehicle came down.
Correct. They'd have to have,
Right. And technically even, I think my car just exceeds that.
a full-size pickup truck will
Yeah.
exceed that. So without accommodations for having a detail and keeping that open as allowing traffic to go southbound as needed, I wouldn't recommend we can approve that.
Yeah, I don't see how either. And there's a mention of parking as a concern. I'm sure it's not just parking, but there's the municipal lot, there's the historical commission lot, there's down at the park, I mean, along
Yeah.
the fence for the IP mill, or the Usher mill and stuff.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
that's all available and free.
prior to the bridge, it's easy, prior to the one lane
Yeah,
on the bridge, it's
yeah,
easy. You just shut it
absolutely.
down and divert everybody, it's not a big deal, but only having there is only one egress for coming down north, and it's not to go over the bridge on Church if you're overweight.
Right. We could do Church, we couldn't do North.
Correct. If they want to move their party to Church,
Yeah. So unfortunately, if you can let them know, there's other parking options obviously, but due to that, not really anything we can do.
No.
All right, I will let them know.
The other item that they came across was there was a letter of commendation that was submitted by Captain Betters of the fire department, recognizing Officer Brandon Bryant. He had, I'll just paraphrase some of it. He was wanting to recognize his calm, cool, collected, and capable efforts in recent calls where he had been there as well, some of them in medical nature, and was admirable of his actions, his ability to provide assistance as trained, and wanted to commend him and note that, and how that's often people hear about we talk about the negative things, right, and stuff, and so he wanted to recognize the efforts and the good work of Officer Bryant. So
Excellent.
appreciate that, and feel good to hear. So unfortunately, Officer Bryant couldn't be here tonight, and he'll get a copy of that, but just wanted to note that for everyone. And I believe now I've completed the agenda.
I think so.
Did I miss anything, Brian?
Well, that's all I had.
Okay. With that, motion to adjourn at 8:37.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.